Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. This is Robert Santana. I am your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Yo, what's up, man?
Yo, what's up, man?
Mang.
End of the day here. It's night over there.
Yeah. So I was every once in a while in the barbell club that I run, I'll do like little pop quizzes. Just I try to poke people a little bit. It's like, how does this stuff work? Because I think, they're like anyone else. They watch different things across the internet and sometimes get some pretty interesting ideas about how, muscles are built or, how nutrition works. And so I'll do like little pop quizzes from time to time. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so this question came up as a result of one of these pop quizzes about, hey, how do muscles actually grow? Like, how do they get bigger? Like, not what causes them to get bigger, but how do they actually grow? Like, what are they made of? And one of the lifters I train asked, what would happen if you ate 100% carbs? Mm-hmm. And I guess he really wanted to know, like, what happens sort of like to your musculoskeletal system. He's like, I understand you can't actually do that, but like, what if you could? What would happen? Like, would your muscles, like, could they respond to anything? Could they grow? I have my thoughts about that, but
I mean, you'd still get the insulin signaling, but you wouldn't be getting any amino acids to rebuild those proteins, right? And you can't convert sugar into a protein. You can convert protein into a sugar. You can't do the opposite, so far as I know. So I don't know. You'd probably get the novice effect, and everything would go to complete shit from a practical standpoint. From a biochemical standpoint, we're not fucking biochemists here. Do you really need the answer to that question? I mean, go talk to a fucking biochemist.
Right.
I'm not going to go there. It's a waste of time. You got plenty of people on the internet going there. We're not going to go there on this show, except when it's of practical use,
Right. Well, yeah.
I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of people trying to turn a physical activity into a theoretical construct. Go sit and masturbate in a classroom at a university if you want to do that. That's not what we're doing here. We're trying to help. Yeah.
They'll allow you to. They will gladly take your $25,000 or more, or far more, a year to do that in the hallowed halls of their educational institutions. So, all right. Well, yeah. Well, I will forward that.
Knowing the specifics of the mTOR pathway isn't going to get that last squat up for you. It's not going to get you a 500 deadlift. Right. Are we writing papers for journals that nobody's going to read, but happily cite? But cite. Not read, but cite. Or are we trying to get bigger and stronger?
Yep.
And again, you can sit here and make academic arguments about this shit, but you're sitting on your ass right now and you need to get under the bar, Right. Plain and simple.
Yep. Yeah, he's a good lifter. He needs to gain some more weight if he wants to push his lifts up. We've talked about that, but no, he's a good lifter and he gets after it. So I think he was just, asking a for funsies question there. But the point of my little pop quiz was simply like, can you gain muscle without gaining weight?
No.
And I was trying to illustrate the point that I think I run into this a lot. I know you do as well. I will run into lifters that kind of want to, quote unquote, do hypertrophy. Fuck, I hate that word so much now.
I can't stand it.
It's like, when I hear that word now, I'm like, okay, we're done.
I want to do hypertrophy.
Yeah, I want to do hypertrophy. I'm like doing hypertrophy, workout. I'm like, what is that? But my whole point was
doing
like
hypertrophy for 10 years.
Yeah, like there's I think there's this idea that like, oh, I don't really want to do the work to like lift super heavy and get strong. So I'll like just do hypertrophy work and I'll just get like bigger muscles and jacked. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, like if you're 6 foot, 175 pounds, you can't just like do a bunch of curls a day and then your arms are going to grow. No, you have to get to be 205 for your arms to grow.
This is a visceral response to them seeing guys on a bunch of testosterone, Anavar, and a bunch of other drugs that are lean, pumping out curls, veins popping out, and then they think that it's a visceral reaction. They see it and they attribute it to the exercises that are being done or the style of training. Mm-hmm. And then when you train that way, It's a different type of fatigue, right? You burn, your muscles get pumped up. You feel like you quote unquote got a workout. It's like I don't know if hybrid's the best word, but it's closer to an endurance stimulus. And we all know that endurance exercise releases more endorphins than lifting, because lifting is totally different. You're dumping a bunch of adrenaline and you're getting just rocked afterwards. You get that comatose feeling where you just want to pass the fuck out and not move. When you run for an hour and actually run hard, you get that runner's high, and you can get that with any type of cardio, actually, but they just call it a runner's high. And that's from the endorphins, right? You don't get that from a heavy lifting session. Now, when you do 8s and 10s and 12s, you might get a little bit more of that. It makes you feel good. You know what else makes you feel good? Cocaine makes you feel good. Are you going to go do cocaine? I mean, if it didn't make you feel good, I don't know from experience, but if it didn't make you feel good, then why the fuck do people get addicted to it? Cigarettes make you feel good too.
Yeah.
So does pizza. So does alcohol. I'm sure heroin does too. I mean, we can go down the list of psychoactive substances that make you feel real good and that people can't stop doing. So just because hypertrophy, quote unquote, work makes you feel good doesn't mean it's what's best for you. I mean, I did it for a year. It felt pretty awesome in the moment, like you could see, as the great Dom Mazzetti said, you could see what you are and what you were all on the same day. Or no, you could see what you are and what you could be all at the same time. It's a lot to take in. Do you remember that?
Right. Yes. That's so good.
For those of you who haven't seen it, you need to Google The Evolution of the Lifting Man.
So good.
Yeah, but he said that you've seen what you are and what you could be all at the same time. It's a lot to take in.
The pump. There's a bump.
Yeah. But the net result was I never had more tendonitis than I ever had in my life training that way. know, and by the end of it, I narrowed down what was productive from it. I've talked about me doing that on this show over the last year and a half. Right, I did it for a year, 13 months. Here I am. I'm pretty much transitioning off of it. For the most part, pretty much off of it. I never did it for lower body. I didn't have to.
Right. Right.
But I still have fucking tendonitis in my left elbow, and I'm barely curling these days. It's almost gone. It's gone on my right. It's just the left is still lingering. But, I want to point this out. I did nothing but the squat, the press, the deadlift, and the bench press, and occasionally the chin up for the last 10 years. I think there were periods where there's some rows in there during like a 4-week block when I was working with a coach and, stuff like that. But, consistently I've done the squat, the press, the deadlift, the bench press, and the chin up. And I never had any joint pain, any connective tissue pain. Sometimes, left side of my lower back would feel kind of off. I'd feel like a very, very like 1 out of 10 dullness down there, and it would be gone by the end of the workout. But it's hard to even consider that any type of serious pain. It's like, okay, I noticed something there, right? Sometimes I notice something in my neck, like noticing something and having something limit my ability to do things are two different things. I never had the second one from barbell training, just from doing my 5s.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do 10s and 8s, and then I work back up to 5s. But for the most part, I did 5 or less reps, heavier weight, and I didn't have anything happen. With the exception of when I didn't know what I was doing my first year and I got coaching, that fixed that. But I never had anything happen that restricted my ability to do things. Right now, for me to pick something up, my left elbow is going to hurt. And that pisses me off, Yeah,
right.
And, I'm recalibrating and it's trending in the right direction. The right one doesn't hurt anymore. The tricep side, the posterior side doesn't hurt anymore. Now it's all in my, brachioradialis area, which is good because at one point I was feeling it on both sides. And, that tells you something right there. There's a few things that I learned from it. I'll elaborate on that in another episode, but this hypertrophy shit is just, it's bullshit. Most of you don't need it. Most of you do not need it.
That's right. Yeah. I will say this. And now I do take a little bit of umbrage at, I see sometimes lifters being like, oh, I did this program and had them doing some like new rep ranges, or maybe they did some high bar pause squats or whatever instead of a low bar squat. And, they make some gains on it, and then they transition back to a program that's based on heavy 5s, a more general strength training program. And they're like, oh man, 5s are the way, I just wasted a bunch of time doing that. It's like 5s are the only way. And they make gains again too. And they're like, oh, I'm just stacking weight on my 5s. And I'm like, well, no, like all the shit that you did before wasn't useless. I'm assuming that they're actually training and not just doing dumb
Right.
shit, right?
Yeah.
It was an intelligent programming change. I'm like, no, you resensitized yourself to fives, right? And I think there is some value in that, right? That, getting away from fives for a time and then coming back to it creates this sort of like new novice effect. It's like a little pop in your training when you're not not sensitized, let's say, to that rep range again. So I see that happen like every couple of years. I'll see some lifters that do that, and it's intermediates, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not like fives are the only way. It's just that you've this is the way programming works over a long time frame.
I came into my linear progression squatting 315. I benched 215 for a set of 5 before I ran it. And I deadlifted 325. And I think my press was somewhere in the low hundreds, like maybe 125, 135 without, just a strict press. Because I'm pretty sure I push pressed higher than that. But I think I strict pressed 135 for a single before that. So I was fucking around, but I think the thing is I always tried to add weight. So because I always tried to add weight, I accidentally got stronger at some of these movements. I didn't understand the deadlift. And once I understood the deadlift, that went up. But, I don't know if I want to jump to this topic or stick to our original plan, but, this hypertrophy shit is just weighing on my mind.
Yeah. It's just like, it's like a wart, as you pop it over here and then it shows up over there and then it just won't go away.
You just need the doctor to freeze the fucking thing off and get rid of it forever.
But that's the problem. We're gonna freeze it off somewhere else. It just it's persistent to that little thing. Well, that's not what we want to talk about today. But it was on my mind, so I brought it up. Today, I think you had a topic for us on the diet side of things.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while, so
okay.
I want to talk about diet deloads.
Deloads, okay? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that people call this various things. I've heard it called maintenance. I've, heard it called diet breaks, but we're lifters, I think the term deload has gotten popular over the last 8 years.
Okay.
Because
what is a
figured
deload?
out that, so yeah, let's start there. So a deload, it's I used to think it was different than a reset, but it might be the same as a reset. So when you're a novice and you're running your linear progression, you squat 325 on Monday, 330 on Wednesday, 340 on Friday, or let's say it's 100, 105, 110. Not everybody's squatting the same weight, right? And then all of a sudden, you miss a rep on Monday the following week. Then you miss a rep again on Wednesday the following week. You can't get that next weight up, right? We would do what's called a reset. We'd take, 8 to 10% off, work back up, make larger jumps in the beginning to get back to where you were, and then that should restore linear progress. A deload tends to happen on more intermediate programs or bodybuilding programs because, anyways, you tend to see deloads on intermediate advanced programs, and bodybuilders like to use them too. And it's a reduction in stress to allow fatigue to dissipate so that you can resume progressing your program the following week. So basically it's active recovery is another word I've heard back in the day.
Yeah.
So deload's the most common one people use now. So you're, reducing the load, typically reducing the volume. You're reducing both usually. My favorite permutation of that is, reduce the volume by a third, reduce the load by 10% if it's a compound, 5% if it's an isolation exercise, right? And that's, there's no hard set rule to this, but that seems to work just fine.
Yeah.
I find that deloads are overused and a lot of people don't need them,
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah.
I think that, if you're doing a bunch of stupid bodybuilding shit, then you probably are going to need one,
Yeah. It's
because
a lot of fatigue on the tendons in the
it's a lot
connective
of
tissue.
fatigue, I'll sit here and argue that a lot of the time the way that that's applied, I think there's a right and a wrong way to do quote unquote bodybuilding stuff. And I think that the traditional programs you find out there are just way more work than most people need, But if you're doing that as written, you're going to be pretty beat up in about a month, and you're going to need to pull some of that stress back. So you might go 4 weeks on, 1 week off. When I have had to use them in the past, I pay attention to the objective data and the subjective data from the lifter. If the lifter's making his lifts, going up steadily, not getting any joint pain. Why the fuck am I going to stop adding on week 5 just because it's week 5? Which is what a lot of people do. I've had, I think, 2 to 3 coaches do this when I've hired coaches in the past.
Interesting.
Where it's like, well, it's week 5. Let's deload, you know?
Right.
And I'm like, well, dude, I'm on fire here. I don't want to fucking take weight off. Why the fuck do I got to do that? Then, on top of it, another common error there is they take too much fucking weight off the bar and too much volume off the bar. Then the next week I get sore as hell because it's like the first week all over again, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I was curious how you treated that. I'm the same way. I don't think I've ever just like programmed a deload as part of a block, as part of a training block. I tend to only, and this is part of the way that I program. You know, I don't send people templates. That might be part of the reason some people do it, but yeah, I will use them proactively sometimes for my old guys but it's always based on, like you say, that subjective data. Whereas, you know, the training is going well. Now I've seen this with old guys where training is going well, they're hitting PRs, but you got to really pay attention to how they're feeling, because even though they might be on a roll, if they start feeling beat up, it's time to hit the deload a little sooner than you think, because otherwise they're going to run themselves into tweaking something, and then they take a big step back.
Step back,
and it's demoralizing, right? You know, if you're like crushing your deadlift every week, your heavy deadlift, and then you tweak your back, and then like you're not going to get back to that for 6 to 8 weeks. That sucks. So yeah, I tend to be proactive there. For everyone else that's not an old person, it's more reactive. Like I'll notice, like you said, the objective data will say like, man, you're starting to miss lifts that you had some great momentum on. You were making good progress for the last 4 to 6 weeks. And now we're starting to run into a wall. And then usually that coincides with, I'm feeling beat up, just didn't have it today. You know, I thought I was strong today, but just, the fatigue is clearly there, even though they're putting a lot of effort into the lift. Well, then I might be like, okay, sounds like you're pretty beat up right now. You run into a wall. Let's take a deload, and we'll take a week. But I do that as needed, because I'm with you. If somebody's got great momentum going, I don't want to break that.
I've had people criticize me. They'll work with me for a while. They're like, there's not even a deload in here. And I'm like, well, who the fuck says there has to be one, dumbass? You've been getting stronger this whole time,
Right.
And, I appreciate the people out there that will say something like that, then I'll explain it and they'll understand it, but sometimes it's not always the case. But, as you were outlining that, I really started thinking about, because I work with a variety of different people, and for better or worse, I've had a lot of exercise clients in my day, and I so have a lot of coaches that have had to work at a commercial gym. You get a lot of exercise clients. And when you're trying to program exercise clients, they don't know they're exercise clients because their goals are goals that are obtained through training, right?
Right.
But what they're willing to do to achieve those goals is very low. They want to exercise their way to the results of training. And, you end up developing programming as a business model, because that's the nature of things. If you program somebody like this to actually train hard and correctly, and you will end up losing that client more than likely. And then that person may end up not working out. So it's a lose-all for everybody. So this is a whole other episode we can do on this, exercise versus training. But, I want to highlight this because it plays into what I'm about to talk about. So when you have an exercise client, and you're a strength coach, and you know what's best for them, and you know what will accidentally get them results just exercising, you're going to slip those barbell lifts in there somewhere, right? Yeah. And then you're going to pepper in the isolation stuff, and, you're going to give some conditioning recommendations, because that's what this type of client wants, and it's going to benefit them better than sitting on their ass or going to work with, the guy down at the commercial gym who's going to, have them do something silly that's going to get them hurt, Right. Or get them absolutely nowhere. They won't even accidentally get, if you start squatting, the way we teach the squat, or deadlifting, the way let's put it all together. If you squat, press, deadlift, bench press, and try to get to a chin up, and you do nothing else, you're accidentally going to progress. Even if you skip workouts or you're doing it once or twice a week. I mean, we have data on this. You're going to progress. Your body's going to change. You're going to feel better. Your posture is going to improve. You're going to get strong, right? Even if you don't get really strong at it. So that's, if for those of you purists out there that might say, "Oh, the fuck do you sleep at night?" Programming exercise clients. It's like, well, that's how, because they're going to build muscle. They're going to get stronger. We've seen this. If you even do the program fucked up, you're going to improve. So my goal is to have more people doing this than not. Do I want to program exercise clients as a large base of my clients? No, absolutely not. I want trainees. The bulk of my clients are trainees that know what they're getting themselves into and want to work hard. So there's my little disclaimer. So now back to exercise clients, right? So you're getting a quasi bodybuilding workout, quasi lifters workout, strength workout. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. And it's designed to go up real slow, And what I've found is when people want to do lots of exercises, whether you're prescribing them or they're doing them on their own, you're accumulating a lot of more fatigue, more training volume, more fatigue. And if you're training in that way, then you're going to need a deload. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it will fall somewhere in that 4 to 6 week range is what I've noticed. I don't think you program like this at all, right, Trent?
No. Like I said, I'm only going to take a deload as needed. I assume that we don't need one until we need one, and it becomes obvious.
This is a good point, because as you were talking earlier, I'm like thinking of all my strength clients, and I'm like, I really don't deload my strength clients very often. It's very rare.
Yeah.
Because the only time I see a need for a deload is when somebody is doing a bunch of accessory work and supplemental work, and their total training volume is higher,
Yes.
Which apparently, according to bodybuilders, it's not that high, because I've had people complain, why am I not doing enough,
Right.
And this, is a frustrating part about the business when you deal with the general public who's consumed fitness publications or bodybuilding publications. There's this expectation that you have to spend hours in the gym doing lots and lots of exercises. And, I can make that work and I can make that productive. I don't like it, but I can, and I've done it myself. I just said I did. But you need deloads when you're doing that, because you build up more fatigue because you're doing more shit. Just like think of a CrossFit workout for you CrossFitters out there. If you actually train like a fucking CrossFitter and try to progress it somewhere like these competitors do, you need deloads because you get beat the fuck up, apparently. I remember I coached one, the first CrossFitter I coached that competed, complained that I didn't give enough food. And, at the time I was like, well, this shit's light, Then I had to educate myself on CrossFit. This was like 8 years ago. And I'm like, these motherfuckers are crazy, first of all. And second of all, I'm like, okay, I could see why this person needs to eat a bunch of calories, and it's, they're not lifting heavy, but they need to eat a bunch of calories because they're doing a whole lot of lifting, and they're doing a whole lot of volume, and they're doing a lot of endurance work on top of all that, So, I'm not talking about the 1 hour WOD. I'm talking about the people trying to go to the games,
Right.
So anyhow, when volume is high, you're probably going to need a deload. And 5 sets of 5 is not high volume. It's high volume for us lifters, but it's not high volume. I'm talking about, 4 sets of 10 squats and then a bunch of lunges afterwards and knee extensions, knee curls, calf raises, and then cardio at the end. I'm just throwing up a random bodybuilding workout. And somebody would say it's not enough because I left out the hack squats and the leg press and the fucking sissy squats that should be in there, but I digress, I think today is like the shit on bodybuilder day of our show.
Oh, that's every day here.
I can't get to the damn point. So, okay, let's just jump to the point here. So, okay, so deload. You've built up a bunch of training fatigue, and you need some active recovery. You still want to train so you don't detrain and get real sore the next week like I have in the past when this concept was misapplied. So you're going to keep training with enough volume and intensity on there to keep you ready to put a bunch of weight on the bar the next week, or the volume if you're doing that stuff, right? So for diet, it's the same concept, right? Like if people minimize how much of a profound effect calorie restriction has on the human body, and, I'd say calorie surplus too, but we rarely run into problems there other than, people just don't want to eat. And, maybe they need a diet deload too, I'll elaborate. I'll talk about that. But, the general rule that I've followed is you shouldn't restrict calories. You shouldn't try to restrict calories because most people don't actually restrict calories through the duration of a diet program. They just are trying to restrict them, and then they end up restricting them a percentage of the time, in practice. So I say 3 to 4 months is a good upper limit for when you should take a break and then scale your calories back up to a maintenance level. That's what I call a diet deload. You're actually not really reducing anything, you're increasing. You're reducing the stress, so that's why, it's kind of like a deload. You're still reducing stress. So let's go back. You're restricting calories. Now you have taken away resources necessary for training recovery, right? Which means training is going to have a more robust effect on you. You're going to be beat up. You can't train as hard, so your volume has to go up because your intensity has to go down. You can't train as heavy on lower calories. And then eventually the effects of that training volume starts to wear on you a lot easier than it would otherwise because you're not eating enough food. So you have a bunch of physical stress here, right? Then restricting calories is stressful. It alters your hormones over time. If you restrict calories long enough, your sex hormones get fucked up. Your stress hormones get fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not getting enough food. Your brain's not getting enough food, especially if you start restricting carbs a whole lot, right? So all of this adds up to a cumulative stress, right? So if you're on a diet for 3-4 months, you're restricting calories. Let's say you're compliant 75% of the time. You have restricted calories for 3 out of those 4 months if you went to the limit, right? And I don't care if you went from 300 to 250. Congratulations, you still need a break. Because, if you keep pushing that for a year to get down to 220 and you've lost 80 pounds in a year or 100 pounds in a year, the likelihood that you're going to come off of that and eat your fucking ass off and gain back everything you just lost and then some goes up with every month you add of calorie restriction. Now, for those of you outliers that have pulled it off, for about a portion of you, guess what? You're 300 again listening to this. Okay, so it didn't work. But then for you outliers who have kept off 100 pounds after a rapid 100-pound weight loss for more than 5 years, congratulations. You're fucking awesome. I want you on the show.
Yeah.
But, my friend, a good friend of mine made this joke where he's like, everybody thinks they're an expert, on everything, And he's like, morbidly obese people are experts on diet because they have more experience eating than anybody else, And, he's just being crass, being an asshole.
Right.
But I have noticed this, and not in everybody who's morbidly obese, but I have had, enough clients and people I've interacted with in that category to where I've noticed a pattern, among them. I'm not going to stereotype and say everybody that's fat's like that or that's morbidly obese is like that, but there tends to be this theme of they've tried a lot of different diets, and understandably so, and they've consumed a lot of information about nutrition. So you end up getting into a lot of in-depth discussions about nutrition, physiology, biochemistry, and all these sorts of things, right? And one of the things that I have to teach these people about, and I've been, sometimes the really heavy folks are easier to deal with than people that are modestly heavy, or skinny fat people,
Right.
Because, by the time they get to me, they've done a million things before. They've learned a lot about themselves in the process, and they're willing to listen a little bit more, I'm not typically getting someone who's 300 pounds and trying to lose it for the first time. That usually doesn't happen,
Right,
I don't get too much of that. Usually I get someone who's done it like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and they want it to be sustainable. And at the heart of it, the thing that I like to highlight is if you want it to be sustainable, you have to stop dieting full time year after year. I get questionnaires where, some of these people write, well, I'm always dieting. I've been dieting for 10 years. It's like, well, no, you haven't. You've been thinking about dieting and trying to diet and maybe actually dieting a fraction of the time for those last 10 years, but you have not been restricting calories week after week for 10 years. However, this is the next point. You have been stressing yourself out about it psychologically, and that's not good for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Give yourself these huge complexes. Yeah, well, I was about to say, I don't have nearly as much experience at this as you do, but I would imagine that what happens if you try to continue to restrict calories after 12, 16 weeks is you end up sabotaging yourself, right? I think the average person is going to try that, and by month 6, let's say they started and they were at 75% compliance for the first few months. I would bet that if they keep trying to diet, by the time they hit month 6, they're at 50% or less compliance. And if they keep going past that, they're at, 25% compliance. So they're really not dieting at all at that point, and so you're really just opening yourself up to sabotage. And we have a way, humans have a way of deluding ourselves. We're really good at this, in fact. All of us are. We have a way of deluding ourselves that we're continuing to do the thing. and that obvious non-compliance, well, yesterday you didn't do your diet, right? And they're like, well, yeah, but it was just that one time, right? It was just that one time that happened. It's just, if that's an exception, I've been on the plan otherwise. And then there's the next one time, and there's the next one time, and then the next one. And sure enough, here you are, month 6, you're complying half the time, and everything is an exception. And when everything's an exception, then nothing's an exception, right? It's a pattern. So yeah, that's. I think there's probably just the behavioral science of this. There's probably a lot of wisdom in restricting yourself to 12 to 16 weeks, because even if you tried to pass that, you're just not gonna. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna be thinking about it for month after month, year after year.
Right.
Have bouts where you do actually remain in restriction, but I think we tend to think about diet so much as, physical inputs and outputs. You're eating food, you're losing fat, right? And it's just all physical. It's all in your body. But yeah, there's an accumulated stress that takes place physically that can alter your metabolism, your hormones, and a vast array of other things. But
yeah.
If you're trying to diet and you never intentionally try to not diet, as in eat like a normal amount and not eat in the context of trying to lose weight, then you're accumulating a lot of psychological and cognitive stress, right?
Yeah.
And that will have profound impacts on your body. And eventually you'll get, some of these guys call it metabolic resistance. What I start to observe is people stop losing weight and they keep trying to lose weight. And, by the time they get to me, they've been trying to lose weight for years, And some of these other gurus, if I may, they say, oh, they need to reverse diet, or they need to go to maintenance, or they need to eat more. And then, they don't, I think it's been presented in a way that's not relatable to the client a lot, because I get a lot of overweight and obese people that will tell me, person told me to eat more and I gained weight, and they're fucking pissed, And what's happening is, I don't think the message is very clear, because I will always start out by saying you might gain weight and it may not be a bad thing. In fact, you are going to gain body weight because you're going to gain water weight from eating more, okay? That is not a bad thing. That is expected, and you might gain a little bit more because you've been restricting so much. But you're not going to keep gaining weight forever if you do it the way I'm telling you to do it, and do this in a balanced, manageable way. But zero weight gain, if you expect zero weight gain, you need to hire somebody else, because I can't promise you zero weight gain. What I can say is, yes, you do need to eat more because you have stressed yourself out beyond reason, trying to lose weight for so long, trying to restrict calories for so long, and turning it into a binge restrict cycle. That's what's actually happening.
Right.
So you sit here and you tell me, I'm eating 1,100 calories and not losing weight. I think I saw 800 calories before. Well, what's actually happening is you're doing that 3 or 4 days a week, and then you're binging out of your fucking mind the other 3 to 4 days a week. Or if you're not quite that bad, you're eating 800 calories or 1,100 calories or whatever the number, plus a certain percentage, because your counts aren't going to be accurate. Sorry, mine aren't either. And then on Saturday and Sunday, you're going to eat triple that or quadruple that or maybe 6 times that. You know? You're not eating that amount of calories 7 consecutive days a week for 5 consecutive years. That is not what's happening. Be honest with yourself about this. It's not physiological. What you're saying is not physiologically plausible. So what I always try to explain is, going through that, low calories to high calories. That's what's happening. You're undereating, overeating, and you do that for months and months and months and years and years and years. We already talked about the physical effects of that. There is a accumulation of psychological stress that happens, and that also plays into your inability to lose body weight. So yes, the solution is more calories, and not because more calories is going to make you lose weight, by the way. It's going to get your body back to baseline. It's going to get your mind back to baseline if you commit to it. If you go into it with the mentality that you cannot allow your body to gain a single ounce of body weight, then you're going to stress out more. Then you're not ready. You're not ready. You need to call me back later when you are, but you're going to have to eat a normal amount of food. And I'm not saying you're going to have to bulk, but I'm also not saying you're going to gain 0 pounds. You're going to gain some body weight. You're going to eat more. Your lifting is going to be better. You're going to feel better as a human. And overall, your overall health is going to improve. Are you going to stay heavy? Yes, for a period of time, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months. It just depends, right? And then you could revisit dieting. and you can pull calories back later. And guess what? The weight loss will probably start moving again, But this idea that I have 100 pounds to lose, therefore I need to lose weight until that 100 pounds is completely gone and not stop. You're setting yourself up for failure. You might do it on a crash diet. It's been done. People have lost large amounts of body weight fast. So I'm not saying that's impossible, but very few people keep it off for more than 5 years,
Yeah, that rebound effect is huge with those crash diets.
Yeah. This is one of those areas where the professional research and the anecdotes line up. We've seen it out in the field, and there's a lot of professional research out there on it. There are journals published on this. They've looked at Biggest Loser contestants. Most of them gained back the weight. The ones that have won, most of them gained back the weight and then more weight. However, this was back in 17 or 18, I think, 2018. I took a class where we learned about this. There was one person who kept most of it off, still gained some back, but kept most of it off past 5 years. And this person didn't win, by the way. She was not the Biggest Loser. So that's what was interesting. She lost it over a much slower period of time and still gained some weight back and then, kept off most of it. Now, I don't know what's going on now with that person, but that was a research article observing, a pop culture show of the time. I don't even know if that show's still a thing. But, like we see it on the ground. The researchers are seeing it in the lab. It's pretty obvious that, having weight loss until there's no more weight to lose in your mind is not healthy. It's going to drive you insane, and it's going to interfere with your life. Your ability to be productive in life is going to interfere with your relationships. It's just not a good way to live, and you know that. I don't have to tell you that. It doesn't feel good to stress out about weight loss. It just takes away resources that could be allocated to other things. And, here we have a bias towards getting strong, But it can interfere with your job. It can interfere with your friendships, your relationships. I mean, people go out to eat all the time. It's a social culture.
Sure.
Here in America and in the Western world, and lots of places actually, food is a big part of culture. So you sit here and you're trying to restrict to a point where you're causing disruptions in your daily life. You want to live like that. I mean, you may. If you may, that's your right as a human. If you may, but I just find that most of the people that hire me with this problem are stressed out. And this is how I present this to them. I'm like, the further you go down this weight loss rabbit hole, the more sacrifices will need to be made, the more disruptive it is to your life. And anybody who's gotten super ripped will not deny that. Go talk to a stage contest bodybuilder, right? They will talk to you. It's a lifestyle that's most people will consider very weird.
Yeah,
it's
extreme.
It's normal. Yeah, it's extreme. Yeah, it's normal in that subculture. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, let's say you're a lady and you're 180 pounds and you're 5'2", and your settling weight might be somewhere between 120 and 140. You got 40 to 60 pounds to lose. You may not lose that in 3 months. You may lose 10 because you're busy in the first cut or fat loss phase. You may get down to 170, and guess what? You have to take a break. Then you might settle into 173, for a couple months. Then you might lose 20 pounds the next time and go down to 153, then settle at 155. And then maybe at the end of the year, you'll get down to like 140. Then all of a sudden, you're restricting and it's interfering with your life and you just can't seem to get below that. Then that's just your weight now. You're somewhere between 140 and 150. And that's where the cookie crumbles, because getting lower than that is going to require a degree of restriction that's disruptive to your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Piss off your spouse, piss off your friends. You're going to be irritable at work. You're not going to be able to concentrate. You're going to be malnourished because you're not getting enough nutrients. All choices you can make. People make lots of choices that are bad for their health, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to tell you what the consequences are, the risks, the benefits, and the rewards,
Yeah. We've talked about on this show many times the understanding the trade-offs that you're making with training and diet. It's important just to understand what the trade-offs that you're making and being okay with that. That's a harder thing to do, right? But yeah, that's a big part, is just the acceptance of like what you're capable of doing in your life. And I would say for the vast majority of people that I work with, almost everyone, there's maybe a couple exceptions, people have limitations. They do not have all of the resources in their life to devote towards health and fitness.
No. We're not pro athletes.
Right. And I'm thinking of like, I've trained a few college kids who, they don't have 100% of their resources devoted to this, but they have an awful lot. If it's a hobby of theirs and it's a strong interest of theirs, they don't have as many responsibilities as older people that have kids and families and businesses and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that's a big part of, frankly, that's a big part of being an adult is understanding the resources that you have and what you're reasonably able to allocate to this task. And then just being okay with that. Like, hey, I've got a busy life. I've got a bunch of kids. I've got this job. I have these other responsibilities. I've got a social life as well. All those are very important things. Some of them are much more important than training, in my opinion. So, maybe I only have 20% of my available resources to devote to this task. Fine. That's great. Work on that first 10 pounds. And that's a fantastic goal. And then, maybe it takes you several years to get there. It's okay. That's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But that I've found in my life, I've struggled with this in different areas, but I found in my life when I can take a good look at the resources that I have and understand, like, this is what I'm willing to allocate. This is a choice that I'm making. I'm gonna allocate this amount of my life to this thing that I want to do. Then I'm much more happy with the outcome than I would be if I'd never really do that calculus. And I'm never really clear with myself about the trade-offs that I'm making. Because usually I'll feel like, for me, I always want to be the best at everything I do. And that's just not realistic with where I'm at in life. I can't be the best at everything. I still want to be, but I'm not going to be. Okay, so, but as long as I'm clear about that trade-off I'm making, it's easier for me to accept, like, okay, I put 10% effort into this and I got a modest result. Hey, that's fine because I know what I did.
Yeah, exactly. We accept that, for those of you who are in sports, there's always the guy that barely does anything, does a fraction of what you do and improves year after year. We've all seen that. In academics, there's the guy that doesn't study and walks in and get A pluses. We've seen that, you know.
Right.
There are people that do your job faster than you do. So we acknowledge this variability between humans in our daily lives. We see it all the time. We'll put an NBA game on. You're going to do any of that shit? Probably not, right?
Yeah, never.
So the same thing applies to all this stuff, It applies to all this stuff. Like, some people are going to get stronger faster than others. Some people are going to have an easier time losing weight. Some people are going to have an easier time building muscle, And that's where you just have to level with yourself and have realistic expectations. If weight loss is hard, why would it happen fast? Come on. The thing that I think of is drawing, right? For me, like, I can't draw worth piss. I just can't. It's like the hardest thing for me to do. I used to doodle in class when I'm spacing out. That's the extent of my art experience. And I have no interest in it, but let's say that suddenly I got the bug and I'm like, I want to learn how to draw, right? It would take me probably 10 to 20 fucking years just to get slightly below baseline of a pretty decent artist, not even a gifted artist. Like, I'm pretty fucking bad,
Yeah.
But, I understand that. I'm like, can I get less shittier at drawing? Absolutely. If I got, a teacher or a coach, whatever you'd call that art teacher, right? Something like that, a mentor.
Yeah, sure.
And they taught me how to draw, and I put the time in and worked my ass off. I'm going to spend probably at least a decade just to get almost mediocre.
Right.
Like, I think it's that bad. Maybe a teacher would have a different opinion on it, but, like, just given how much I've struggled, I'm like, I can't even see myself getting mediocre at this,
Yeah, sure.
But I've seen my brother, my stepbrother, he's an animator at Disney, and, he was drawing at age, 6, 7? I can't remember the first time I saw him draw something, but early 90s, I'd say, and he was born in the early 80s, so he was like 10 years old, and, he drew the fucking tiger from Jungle Book because I asked him to, and, to me, as a, to the naked eye, I'm like, damn, it looks pretty fucking good, And
right.
Fast forward, 13 years later, he's, in art school, and 15 years later, he's at Disney,
Yeah.
So, he's pretty gifted. He doesn't, he will sit there and say he's a workhorse, and he is. There's guys that are even better than him out there, but his baseline was certainly above average. Just, maybe a standard deviation is the way he would describe it in terms of, our audience understands is he'd probably say he's one standard deviation, not three,
Right. Yeah.
And, that's kind of that's what I'm getting at. Like some people will drop cream out of their coffee and skip the donut in the morning and lose a bunch of body weight and have abs. These people exist. They were lean in high school. Their diet went shitty when they started working. Clean up the diet and they're ripped again, just like their high school self. We hate these motherfuckers. They should all burn in hell. But then you have other people that, just smell a donut and they gain 5 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of those people, guess what? You're fucking pissing upstream, and I'm sorry for that, but you're real fucking strong, stronger than me. You have more muscle mass than I do, so fuck you too,
Right.
But you can lose weight. You can benefit from cleaning up your diet, and you could be less fat. You may not have visible ripped abs. You may not even be a reasonably skinny person. I've worked with people of all shapes and sizes, and there is a certain weight or weight range or body composition range that you're going to settle into. For some people it's real skinny and ripped. For some people it's chubby, and for other people it's somewhere in between. You look pretty good in clothes, but you're not ripped, you're not fat, you're not skinny fat either because you've been training. But you look like you train, but you're not like a ripped bodybuilder, you're not a big fat guy. So we all settle into certain ranges, and you figure that out as you start putting in work and changing things. You start changing your habits and changing your lifestyle. Your body's going to change, but there are limits to that, right? And getting beyond those limits, if it's even possible, requires very weird, strange behavior that is typically not sustainable. So just keep that in mind. There's 2 messages there. Number one, so many of us have a poor diet, You clean up your diet, that alone, if you actually clean up your diet and you maintain it for entire weeks at a time, you're going to see a body fat loss, pretty easily, most of you.
Yeah.
The vast majority of you will see a loss of body fat just from cleaning up the fucking diet. And number 2, there's a limit, You might, lose enough weight and have a reasonable lifestyle and still be a little chubby.
Mm-hmm.
And how you get to a place of acceptance of that is up to you. I can't tell you how to do that because, I can't tell you that, you can go lower than that, but it's going to disrupt your life. Do you want to disrupt your life? So that's the second message. How much disruption are you willing to tolerate within your lifestyle to lose that weight? And number 3, and this was the whole point of the episode, don't do it all in one shot. If you have a large amount, if you lose what you lose in 3 to 4 months, you take a fucking break. Even if you were non-compliant most of the time, because that's the next question I get, you take a break because you know what? It's taking a toll on your brain too. You have to take a break.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's not going to magically improve. Your compliance isn't going to magically improve with another month or 2.
No.
You can't white knuckle your way through anything.
No. And some phases, just like some training cycles are better than others. It's the same thing. Some weight loss phases are better than others.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out. So if we go back to like kind of the deloading in a training context, in a programming context, one of the reasons that deloads are even necessary in the first place is because fatigue and recovery are dynamic. They're variable. They're not easy to predict, and they change from week to week, especially, as I said, with people with busy lives. You just can't, we've talked about this a lot of times before. You can't predict when your toddler is going to be up all night till 4 a.m. and you're up with them. Okay. Well, that's going to ding your recovery. Sorry. And, enough of those type of things can add up to where your program otherwise would have been going fine, but you need to take a deload to let all that fatigue and stress dissipate. The same thing I think is true of dieting, right? It's those psychological factors plus all the life factors. It can add up. And so sometimes some phases of life are worse than others, right? The phase of life I'm in right now with a young child is not a great phase of life for training. I've had much better years of training. It's fine. It took me a while to accept it. I've accepted that. And once I did, I started making progress again. Now, it's nowhere near PRs for me, but I'm doing a lot better than I did 6 months ago. And I've added weight to the bar on a pretty consistent basis. So I'll take it. That's good momentum. That's good. That's a good trend. Last thing I would say about, that I think is kind of underrated, and I'm not really qualified to speak about this in any detail, but I think this is underrated part of cleaning up your diet. I think it's going to make you feel better. I think it's going to contribute to your health in a way that's entirely separate from your body composition, right? I suspect, and I'd like to do an episode about this someday. I suspect that a lot of people out there, because of their poor diets, have terrible GI systems. Like their digestion sucks, and they've probably done a fair amount of damage to it.
Some of that's stress related too.
Stress plays into this, absolutely. But there's a lot of different things that can ding your digestive tract, right? And you probably don't have good gut flora and all that stuff. And so, I bet when you get people eating real food, not a bunch of fake shit, eating a decent balance of food, in terms of decent macro balance, enough fiber, enough water, that kind of stuff, I bet that your gut flora improves and you start digesting the calories that you do eat and you get more out of them. You're actually extracting more energy from less food, right?
That's probably right.
Yeah, I bet there's something there, and you feel better in the process because your digestion doesn't suck, right? There's like this sort of probably a lot of inflammation balled up in that you're not feeling anymore, and that is, I think that's super underrated because when you feel good, it makes you feel more positive about the body you have today.
Yep,
and it makes it a lot easier to walk through life and not be stressed out all the time.
I would agree.
So yeah, I couldn't talk to you about the science of all that, but I see it. I'm telling you, there's a big pattern out there. I see a lot of people that have poor diets also have horrible digestion and they feel like shit all the time. So if you can fix that, hey, at the very least, even if you don't lose any weight, you feel better. I would take that.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. So, all right. I think we've done enough on this. What do you think?
All right. Yeah, I think we've hammered that pretty good. So, let's close out. Thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com, on Instagram at _Robert_Santana. You can find my gym in Phoenix. If you're Metro Phoenix, I am just south of the airport, so conveniently located, about 10 minutes from Sky Harbor, maybe 5. And we have an Instagram page that I need to update. It's weights _and_plates.
I think you need a deload from saying that you're going to update the Weights and Plates Instagram page.
I do.
I've noticed your compliance has dropped over
Yeah. I'm getting joint pain.
Right.
My orbital muscles.
Yeah. So maybe you should just like stop saying that you're going to update the Weights and Plates Instagram page for a while and then come back to it in a different phase of life. Yeah.
This is good. Work deloads. There you go.
Work deloads. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, at marmalade_cream. That's where you can find me on Instagram. Hey, I joined Twitter. I don't know what I'm doing there. Not much, but I'm going to do something with it, I guess. At marmalade_cream as well. Pretty easy. And if you want to ask me any questions about training, you can email me, jonesbarbellclub@gmail.com. All right, catch you in a couple weeks.